So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through how I proved that the laboratories are deliberately tampering with samples by using my urinary tract, which is the only sterile zone that I have access to. Obviously I can't go and get blood out of myself wherever I want. I'm going to prove that this growth that should be sterile in my urinary tract keeps coming back as a nil from the laboratories. Infectious diseases, Indy Sundararaja at Westmead Infectious Diseases said that he did 7-day cultures, because I believed at that stage that it might just be that they're not growing fast enough, but in actual fact it's that they're being deliberately denied recognition. So what I did here was, the first thing I did was I took a sputum sample that was ordered by my doctor for this Pruellen, as they call it, sputum, and I added two colonies from this culture here. Now, by adding those two cultures, I had fully grown gram-positive Kochis and fresh gram-positive Kochis, and the result was multiple gram-positive Kochis. So, therefore confirming that what I was actually growing was a gram-positive Kochi. The next thing I did was I put that to the test through a microbiology study group on Facebook, and they identified Candidus albicans and Enterococcus just off a photograph. But later, after it was recognised as a gram-positive Kochi, Streptococcus was also identified. Now, after that, I looked into, well, how can you tell the difference between Staphylococcus and Streptococcus? And it's I didn't realise quite how easy that was. There's only two gram-positive Kochis, and that's Staph, which is a large separated colony, and Streptococcus, which is a large group of colonies, of smaller colonies grouped together. So therefore we've confirmed that it's a Streptococcus. The second test I did, to test the laboratories in this case, was I took this growth here, put this entire plate into a urinary sample, in the hopes of, if there's enough bacteria, they'll be forced to identify it. Now, the result I got back for that, zero growth in bacterium, just Candidas. So they recognised the Candidas but not the bacteria. Now, the third test I did for this was I took a direct urethral swab, which is growing this gram-positive Kochi here, identified as a Streptococcus because it's small clustered colonies. And through private testing, which took me a long time to find because it's not well known, I requested it as a penile sample. Now, as a penile sample, it becomes a skin sample, therefore being available for native flora. All of a sudden, when you put it in a native flora area, there's moderate gram-positive Kochis again. Now that proves that anything that comes from a sterile site, they claim nil growth, but if you put it in a native flora area, I've got a gram-positive Kochi. Now, this gram-positive Kochi identified as a Streptococcus, and later on we'll go through the tests that confirm that it's Streptococcus disgalactate and how I got to that conclusion through research and through case study. But another thing that became apparent to me as I was doing this was my latest doctor gave me a request for that sputum sample that we discussed earlier. Now on this form, I've got written on it Streptococcus disgalactate, Enterococcus and Peptostreptococcus. Now, these three Streptococcus are related to a streptolysin O test, which I will get to in a little while as well. as part of the testing, and we'll go through that with the research. But I was told I can't do that again because tampering with a form is medical fraud, regardless of whether it's to try and save my own life. So, when I got private testing done, I got it listed as Streptococcus dysgalactae. You'll notice with this, when they gave me this result, which is the same result that confirmed the gram-positive cocci from a penile sample, that it's Streptococcus group B agalactae for nil growth, or not isolated. That means that they changed the name of the bacteria to prevent identification of the bacteria that was requested. And the reason for that bacteria being requested will be a part of the next section,